My name is Mitchell, and I'm 35 years old. 3 months ago, I stood on the marble steps of the Whitmore Hotel in Midtown, staring through glass doors at a wedding I wasn't welcome to attend. Inside, the light was gold, chandeliers dripping crystals, waiters balancing champagne flutes like jewelry on silver trays. The kind of event where the scent of peonies mixed with the price of status. My younger sister, Christy, had finally built her dream night. 480 guests, a live orchestra, a menu that had its own publicist. Outside in my simple black dress and borrowed heels, I could see my reflection ghosted in the glass. I looked calm. I wasn't. My fingers shook as I adjusted the strap of my clutch because I knew, before anyone said it aloud, that my name wasn't on the list. Name? The woman at the check-in desk asked without looking up, stylus hovering above a tablet. Her voice was polite in the way people are polite to valet drivers and delivery apps. Mitchell, I said. A bride's sister. She smiled automatically. One moment. Swipe, scroll, swipe again. Her smile faltered. Could you spell that? I spelled it. She looked again, her brows pinched. I'm sorry, Ms. Mitchell, I'm not seeing you here. Perhaps you're listed as a +1. No, I RSVP'd directly. I took out my phone, opened the email with its pastel font and looping logo. Christy and Ryan, 10 years in the making. See? Confirmed April 14th, table 12. Her eyes flicked over it, then to me, then back to her tablet. If you could step aside for just a moment, I'll call the wedding coordinator. But I already knew. My sister never made administrative mistakes. When it came to image, Christy was surgical. I walked toward the column near the doors and dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, breathless, giddy. Behind her, laughter, the buzz of a bridal suite, the sound of hairspray and success. Mitchell, what's wrong? I'm about to walk down the aisle. They don't have me on the guest list, I said. At check-in. Silence, just long enough for me to hear glasses clinking, someone shouting, 10 minutes? Then her voice returned, smooth as glass. Oh, that. That? You're not coming tonight, she said matter-of-factly, as if announcing the weather. You can't. I'm your sister, I whispered. I know, but Mitchell, try to understand. Ryan's investors are here. People from Helios, from Solara, his board. These are multi-billion-dollar conversations. You wouldn't feel comfortable. Because you don't move in those circles. I can't have awkward moments. You're doing what? Houses? Rentals? It's just not... She paused, searching for something kind and landing on cruel, appropriate. I let the words hang between us like static. 8 years of swallowing smaller humiliations prepared me for this one, and yet it still burned new. You sent me an invitation, I said quietly. I know, but that was before. Things have changed. You'll understand one day. Her tone softened like sugar over steel. Maybe lunch next month, okay? Once the chaos is over? Click. I stood there holding the phone, the violin swelling on the other side of the glass. For 20 seconds, I didn't move. Then I exhaled and slipped a small cream envelope from my clutch. Inside was what I had planned to give her after the toast, what I had saved for, rebuilt for, imagined for. It wasn't cash. It wasn't jewelry. It was the deed to our childhood home, the one she'd always called her dream house. I'd bought it back from the bank 6 months earlier, restored every inch, and tonight I'd planned to hand her the keys in front of everyone to prove that success didn't always wear sequins. But some gifts lose their meaning the moment respect leaves the room. Could you please make sure the bride gets this after the ceremony? I told the coordinator, handing her the envelope. It's important. She nodded, confused. Of course. Then I turned away from the glowing ballroom, the laughter, the orchestrated applause of privilege, and stepped into the October cold. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I walked. Down Madison Avenue, past the streetlight halos, past cabs and perfume, and the smell of champagne I could still feel in my throat. At a small Italian cafe 3 blocks away, I sat at the counter, ordered pasta arrabbiata and a glass of Chianti, and left my phone face down. Halfway through the meal, the phone began to vibrate like it had a heartbeat. Once, again, then continuously. 47 missed calls before dessert. When I finally flipped it over, the screen glowed with chaos. Christy, 47 calls. Mom, 15. Dad, 6. Unknown numbers. Texts. Christy. What is this envelope? Christy. Tell me this isn't real. Christy. Why didn't you say anything? Mom. You ruined her wedding. Mom. Answer your sister now. I smiled faintly. The irony of being accused of ruining a party I wasn't invited to. I drained my glass, paid the check, and walked home through streets slick with rain, a kind of baptism I didn't ask for but probably needed. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept through till morning. Sunlight sliced through my apartment blinds like an accusation. My phone lay on the nightstand, still buzzing. When I finally turned it on, there were 127 missed calls and a voicemail inbox full to capacity. Christy's voice was in the first one. Hi, brittle. Mitchell, what kind of joke is this? You're listed as Senior Vice President of Acquisitions at Stratford and Hale? That can't be real. Call me. In the 10th, she was crying. I looked it up. Oh my God, it's real. Your name's on the website. Why didn't you tell us? Please call me. Please. By message 23, she'd gone from guilt to bargaining. If we talk, if you come over, maybe we can fix this. I stopped listening. 8 years earlier, I'd left my corporate job in accounting. Everyone called it a mistake, including Christy. Real estate? She'd laughed. What are you going to do, hand out flyers on porches? Back then, the market was wild, the hours brutal. I started small. Open houses in Queens, apartments with peeling paint, and clients with impossible dreams. But I loved it. The geometry of space, the language of light, the quiet power of handing someone a key. Christy went corporate. Marketing firm, suits and slogans. She collected promotions the way some people collect stamps. My parents adored it. At dinners, she'd perform. I just landed the Solar campaign, she'd announce, and Mom would beam. What about you, Mitchie? Sold any bungalows this week? They laughed. I smiled. And quietly, I learned to stop talking. In the years that followed, I stopped bringing boyfriends to holidays. I stopped explaining commissions or listings or why I liked being self-employed. I stopped defending the way I lived. But success, real success, has a habit of arriving unannounced. 3 years ago, I brokered a redevelopment project in Hudson Yards. Everyone else had walked away when the permit stalled. I stayed, negotiated, cut through a mess of zoning codes, and closed at 19% above projection. Stratford and Hale noticed. 6 rounds of interviews later, I had a corner office, a salary that would have made Christy faint, and a portfolio of properties valued in the hundreds of millions. And that's when I found the house. Our house. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was flaking, the porch sagging, the maple tree still reaching toward the sky like it hadn't noticed time. There was a foreclosure sign leaning crooked against the steps. I stood there for a long time remembering how Christy used to trace the grooves on the banister when she was nervous, how Dad's hammer always hung on the same nail, how Mom smelled like coffee and optimism. When we were kids, Christy had once stood in the front yard and announced she'd get married there. Right under that maple, she said, with fairy lights and a string quartet. She was 12. I was 15. I told her she'd outgrow it. She never did. When she got engaged last year, she posted an entire mood board titled Forever Home Vibes. And our old house was right there, pinned among Tuscan villas and Hamptons mansions. So I bought it. Quietly. Cash. I hired a small team, restored everything. Sanded, painted, rewired, polished. Found a craftsman to rebuild the porch rail by hand. Even uncovered Mom's pencil marks on the kitchen door where she'd measured us each birthday. By September, it gleamed like memory. I had the deed in a velvet box wrapped with ribbon. I imagined my toast at the reception. To my sister who dreamed under this maple tree, may she always find her way home. But she never let me reach the mic. When the envelope reached her, delivered right into her hands by the coordinator during cocktail hour, she probably expected a check or something small enough to ignore. Instead, she found a photocopy of the deed, the letter, and my business card. Mitchell, Senior Vice President, Acquisitions, Stratford and Hale Real Estate Partners. I was going to give you this key tonight. The house you loved is yours, restored, waiting. But you made it clear I don't belong at your table. So maybe the house should belong to people who need one. Someone must have looked it up on their phone. Someone must have gasped because the next thing I knew, every person who mattered to her knew exactly who I was and what I'd done. The girl she'd erased had turned into the woman who signed deeds. And then my cousin Mara started live texting me exactly how it detonated. Mara, they handed your envelope to Christy during cocktails like you asked. She laughed and said, Mitchell probably left cash. Mara, one of the bridesmaids opened it right there. The deed copy slid out. People stopped talking. Mara, Christy read your card. Her smile fell off her face like a button. She whispered, This isn't funny. Mara, Ryan tried to take the paper. An investor, gray suit, navy tie, said, Wait, Stratford and Hale? Then he literally pulled up the site on his phone. Mara, two more guys leaned in. Is that the Mitchell from the Hudson Yards thing? I swear to God they knew you by name. Mara, the quartet missed a cue. The conductor put his hand up. Music stopped. You could hear phones unlocking everywhere. Mara, someone read from the site. Senior Vice President, Acquisitions. Then your bio, then the portfolio number. Mara. Ryan's face went white. He said, We didn't know. And the Sequoia guy goes, So your wife uninvited a senior partner from a key real estate counterparty. That's remarkable judgment. Mara, Christy tried to laugh it off. Family drama, but no one laughed. They were Googling you. Mara, she asked the band to start again. They didn't. The coordinator looked like she wanted to faint. Mara, Ryan's phone rang, then another investor's. Then 3 more. People started stepping into the hallway to take calls. Mara, your mom told a table it was a misunderstanding. Aunt Jo said, The misunderstanding is that she thought status is character. Mara, and then, this is the part, you could feel the room flip. Like the air changed. Everyone realized the unsuccessful sister is the person they've been trying to meet for months. Mara, Ryan's board member asked him loud enough to hear, Did you know your wife publicly humiliated one of our preferred partners? Mara. He muttered, We didn't realize, and the guy cut him off. You realize now. Mara, Christy started calling you. She hasn't stopped. This is bad for them. Very. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching the text bubbles cascade like falling tiles. No drama from me, no scene. Just an envelope and a mirror held up to a room that finally saw itself. By the time Mara sent her last message, the band just resumed. People are dancing, but it feels like a wake. My phone was already buzzing with Ryan's number. I let it ring. By morning, my apartment looked like the aftermath of a storm that hadn't touched a single object but rearranged the air itself. Sunlight poured through the blinds in sharp lines. The city was waking up. Car horns, coffee carts, the slow hum of a Monday that had no idea someone's reputation had died in a ballroom the night before. My phone was still vibrating, 127 missed calls, dozens of messages, and a voicemail box bursting with panic. I pressed play. Christy's voice, shrill and ragged. Mitchell, what did you do? You humiliated me. They were Googling you at the table. I can't, just call me. The next one, Ryan, controlled but cracking underneath. We need to talk. There's a lot of confusion about us last night. Some of our partners were there. Let's fix this before it escalates. Then Mom, your sister is hysterical. Whatever you've done, you've ruined her wedding day and possibly Ryan's career. Call us now. And finally, Mara's message from 2:37 a.m. They stopped the music, Mitch. You could have heard a pin drop. Ryan's investors left early. Christy's still crying. And somehow they're blaming you for handing them a mirror. I showered, made coffee, and opened my curtains wide. I wasn't hiding from daylight. Not anymore. When the phone rang again, I answered. Mitchell. Ryan's voice, tight, corporate calm. We just need to clear the air. Investors got the wrong idea. They think that I'm your wife's unpaid embarrassment, I cut in, or that she uninvited an executive from one of your partner firms to keep her guest list on brand. He exhaled sharply. Look, we didn't know what? Who I was? He hesitated. You never said you worked with Stratford and Hale. I also never said I didn't, I replied. You both assumed I wasn't worth asking about. Ryan's tone shifted from defensive to pleading. This could seriously damage us. People were making calls all night. One of our largest backers, Sequoia West, just froze the next round pending a review. That's tens of millions, Mitchell. Can you imagine how this looks? Yes, I said calmly. Like poetic symmetry. Please. His voice cracked just once. Can we meet? Talk in person? I have nothing to fix, I said, and hung up. Mom called next. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I was curious how the family would spin it. Mitchell, do you even realize what's happened? She began, skipping hello. Christy's devastated. Ryan's company is in chaos. People are gossiping. About what exactly? I asked. About the fact that my sister's cruelty backfired? That she uninvited me and accidentally exposed herself in front of everyone she was trying to impress? This isn't about blame, Mom said, her voice rising. It's about family. No, I said softly. It's about consequences. You've embarrassed all of us? I took a sip of coffee. No, Mom, I embarrassed no one. I simply told the truth with good stationery. There was a pause. The kind of silence that happens when someone runs out of rehearsed lines. Then she sighed, that long, disappointed sigh she'd used on me since childhood. You've changed, she said. I hope so, I replied, and ended the call. That afternoon, Mara showed up at my door. She didn't knock, she just texted, I'm outside and I brought pastries and damage reports. I let her in. She kicked off her shoes, handed me a bag of croissants, and dropped onto the couch. You look infuriatingly peaceful, she said. It's unsettling. I had a good night's sleep. Your sister hasn't. She's been alternating between sobbing and threatening to sue you for emotional sabotage. I raised an eyebrow. For giving her a legal property deed? Apparently, yes. Also, everyone at the wedding knows you're with Stratford and Hale now. The investor guys, gray suit and navy tie, confirmed it. One of them even told Ryan he should have known better than to marry someone who confuses manners with class. I smiled into my coffee. That's a good line. Yeah, Mara said. He delivered it right before leaving the ballroom. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos. Here, look. The after party never recovered. The photographer caught Christy in tears near the cake. Ryan's trying to hold her hand. Investors in the background look like they're watching a slow-motion collapse. I looked at the picture. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Standing there in her designer gowns, surrounded by money and mirrors, realizing too late that none of it could buy dignity. Almost. The next day, Tobias, and my boss at Stratford and Hale, appeared in my doorway. He rarely left his own floor unless something big was happening. He carried a folded copy of the Wall Street Ledger. He laid it gently on my desk. The headline, Wedding of the Year turns PR nightmare for tech startup CEO, thanks to a sister's surprise. Underneath, a smaller subhead. Uninvited family member revealed to be a top executive at Stratford and Hale, one of the firm's strategic real estate partners. I exhaled through my nose. So much for anonymity, Tobias smirked. You didn't do anything illegal, or even unprofessional. Quite the opposite, actually. I'd call it elegant. Elegant? I echoed. You held a mirror up to arrogance, he said. The fallout isn't your mess to clean. Let them mop up the champagne. He started to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, Stratford's board is impressed. You've handled the attention with restraint. That's rare. Restraint was the only luxury I could afford, I said. He nodded, understanding more than he said, and left. By midweek, the calls from my family slowed, replaced by a steady drip of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Colleagues, old classmates, even competitors. Half congratulations, half curiosity. Heard about the Whitmore incident. Iconic move, honestly. You're a legend. That's what they get for underestimating women in real estate. We're hosting a panel on equity and leadership. Would you consider speaking? The irony wasn't lost on me. One weekend of silent revenge, and suddenly the same people who'd once dismissed me as that girl with the open houses wanted my advice on power dynamics. 3 days later, Dad called. His voice was quieter than I remembered, almost small. I drove past the old house, he said. It looks beautiful. Thank you, I said simply. Your mother's upset, he continued. But I think maybe we owe you an apology. I didn't realize how hard you'd worked, how much you'd built. You didn't ask, I said gently. None of you did. He exhaled. Christy said you're giving the house away. I haven't decided yet, I lied. But I know one thing, it won't go to someone who treats people like furniture. He was silent for a moment. I miss when things were simple. They were never simple, I said. You just didn't see the cracks. The next evening, Dad called again. His voice was steadier this time, the kind of calm that feels rehearsed. Your mother's cooking dinner, he said. We're all here. Just come by, Mitch. No fighting. We just need to talk. The word talk hung between us like bait. I hesitated. Who's we? Your mother, Christy, Ryan. Aunt Jo stopped in too. Just come, okay? Let's clear the air. Clear the air, as if all this was weather, not choices. Still, I agreed. Maybe some part of me, tired, bruised, still loyal, wanted to believe in a version of family that could own its mistakes. When I pulled up to my parents' house, the lights in the living room glowed too bright like a stage set. Through the window, I could see shapes moving. Mom arranging plates, Dad pacing, Christy standing stiff in the corner while Ryan murmured something to her. For a second, I almost turned around, but then I remembered the countless dinners where I'd stayed quiet just to keep peace. Tonight, silence wasn't invited. I rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately. Mom's face was too composed. Mitchell, she said, smiling thinly. I'm glad you came. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Comfort food as camouflage. Aunt Jo waved from the sofa. There's my girl, she said softly, but her eyes looked cautious. Dad gestured to the dining table. Let's sit. We don't need to rehash everything, just talk. Christy wouldn't look at me. She was still beautiful in that polished, high-gloss way she'd perfected. Hair smooth, nails immaculate, eyes rimmed in fatigue. Ryan sat beside her, posture corporate even at a family dinner. The plates were set for 6. The food untouched. No one had an appetite for what was coming. For a moment, we just listened to the clinking of silverware, the hum of the refrigerator. Then Mom folded her hands like a CEO about to fire someone gently. You know why we wanted to see you, she began. Things got out of hand after the wedding. Out of hand, I repeated. That's one way to describe public humiliation followed by 47 missed calls. Mitchell, Dad said warningly, but his tone lacked conviction. Mom sighed. We all said things we regret. I didn't say anything, I said. That was the problem, remember? Christy's head snapped up. You didn't have to say anything. You let that envelope do the talking. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I didn't embarrass you, I said quietly. You embarrassed yourself. She slammed her hand on the table. You think you're a saint? You blindsided me with that deed, that letter, that whatever game you were playing. You turned my wedding into a scandal. Christy, Ryan murmured, placing a hand on her arm. Let's just... No, she snapped. You weren't the one they were whispering about. You weren't the one every investor kept calling the next morning asking if my sister was testing our judgment. Her voice cracked. Do you know how that felt? Yes, I said. Because I've felt it my entire life? The words dropped like glass. The room froze. Mom recovered first, her tone measured. Honey, we're not here to fight. We just need to think about what happens next. What happens next? I asked. You mean after Christy's PR hangover? Dad cleared his throat. We heard you're giving the house away. Christy's eyes flicked toward him sharply. Dad? It's true, isn't it? Mom pressed. You're donating it. That's what your cousin said. I met her gaze. Maybe. Mitchell, Dad said, choosing his words carefully. That house, it's history. It's family. If you really want to make things right, you could give it to Christy and Ryan. You bought it for her originally, didn't you? That was before she decided I didn't belong in her life. Christy's laugh was sharp and humorless. Oh, come on, you can't still be playing the victim? You uninvited yourself the moment you made me look small. You did that, I said, when you erased me. Her chair scraped back. I worked my whole life for where I am. For once, people respected me, and you took that from me in one night. Respect built on other people's silence, I said, isn't respect. Ryan leaned forward, palms flat on the table, his voice low but firm. Look, whatever happened, we all need to be adults about this. My investors are still asking questions. If we can show the families united, it'll help everyone. I turned to him slowly. So this is about optics. He didn't flinch. It's about damage control. Mom nodded as if that was reasonable. Exactly. And donating the house? Mitchell, that's dramatic. People are talking. It makes it look like you're vindictive. I'm not vindictive, I said. I'm consistent. Sweetheart, Mom said, softening her voice in that dangerous way she did before she cut someone down. You've proven your point. You're successful. We're proud of you. But there's no need to keep punishing your sister. I laughed, once, dryly. Punishment? I offered her a gift. She threw it away. Dad's jaw tightened. We're asking you as family to reconsider. Keep the house in the family name. Give it to your sister like you intended. It's what your mother wants, what your grandmother would have wanted. I met his eyes. You don't get to summon dead relatives as leverage. Christy stood up abruptly, eyes glistening. Do you have any idea what people are saying? That Ryan's marriage is a liability. That I'm petty, insecure, cruel? I lost clients, Mitchell. Real clients. Do you think that doesn't matter? Maybe it matters less than the people you hurt on your way up. She blinked, furious tears spilling down her cheeks. You ruined my life because you couldn't stand that I was finally happy. No, I said softly. I ruined your illusion because you built it on my silence. Aunt Jo, who'd been quiet this whole time, finally spoke. Maybe you all need to stop pretending this is about a house, she said. It's about control. Mitchell found hers, and you can't stand it. Stay out of this, Mom snapped, her calm finally cracking. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, Aunt Jo interrupted. You want her to make it right by going back to being small. The room went still again. Dad tried to mediate, his voice rising slightly. Enough, we're not enemies here, we're family. Family? I asked. Family is supposed to have your back when everyone else doubts you, not hand you the knife. Mitchell? Mom began. No, I said, standing. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. You invited me here for an apology, but this was an ambush. You don't want peace, you want obedience. Christy's voice trembled, sharp and small at once. You're twisting everything. You always do. Maybe, I said. Or maybe you just can't stand that the story doesn't center on you anymore. Ryan stood too, as if trying to regain control of the scene. If you walk out now, you'll regret it. Think about your reputation, your company. I turned to him, smiling faintly. Ryan, I manage a portfolio bigger than your entire valuation. I think my reputation can survive dinner. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Mom followed me to the hallway, voice trembling between pleading and fury. Mitchell, please, don't throw this family away over pride. I looked at her hand on my arm, perfectly manicured, trembling just enough to look human. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. I'm just cleaning house. She froze. What does that mean? It means, I said quietly, that sometimes the only way to save something sacred is to stop calling it family. And I walked out. Outside, the night was cold enough to sting. The porch light flickered, same as it had when I was 17 and sneaking out after curfew. Behind me, voices rose, muffled by the door. My name, Sharp, panicked. I didn't turn back. Mara's car was parked half a block down. She rolled down the window when she saw me. How bad? She asked. I exhaled, watching my breath fog the air. They tried to make me the villain. Again. And? I let them. Mara nodded slowly. You know what that means, right? I looked up at the sky where the first flakes of snow were starting to fall. Yeah, I said. It means it's time to give the house a new story. That night, I found myself driving out to Queens. The house looked different in the dark, softer, almost shy beneath the new porch lights. I stood at the gate listening to the creak of the maple branches above and thought about what Mara had said. You held up a mirror. Maybe that was all revenge really was. Not destruction, but reflection. Inside my coat pocket, I still had the second copy of the deed. The one not meant for Christy. The one I'd been thinking about handing to someone who could actually use it. That's when I made the call. Ms. Alvarez, I said when she picked up. You mentioned your organization is short on housing units? Yes, she said cautiously. We have 20 women on the waiting list right now. Why? I think I can help. I have a property, move-in ready, no strings. She went quiet. Are you serious? I've never been more. The next morning, I met her at Stratford's downtown conference room. Carmen Alvarez, mid-50s, worn hands, eyes that had seen too much and still managed to be kind. When I handed her the documents, she stared at them like I'd placed gold on the table. This is a home. You're donating the whole property? Yes, I said. It's already paid off. Use it for whoever needs it most. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you know how many lives this will change? Probably the same number of years my family spent pretending mine didn't matter, I said, smiling faintly. Seems fair. She stood, impulsively hugged me, and whispered, You just gave hope an address. That afternoon, I sent one final message to Christy. No anger, no gloating, just facts. Subject, about the house. Dear Christy, the home you loved as a child is now part of Maple House, a transitional living program for women rebuilding their lives. You wanted it to represent forever. It will, just not the way you imagined. Consider it my wedding gift to humanity. Mitchell, she replied within minutes. Christy, you're cruel. That house was our childhood, our story. Christy, you didn't have to make this public. Christy, you destroyed everything for attention. I typed a reply and deleted it 3 times before sending the simplest truth I could manage. Me, I didn't destroy anything, Christy. I just stopped building altars to your ego. 2 weeks later, the story broke again, this time in Forbes Women, the real estate executive who turned family betrayal into housing for survivors. No one mentioned Christy by name. They didn't have to. The internet had already filled in the blanks. Ryan's company released a statement about restructuring. Investors quietly stepped back. By Christmas, Christie's Instagram, once a shrine of luxury had gone private. And me? I kept my head down. I didn't need applause. Silence was currency enough. Months later, Carmen invited me to the official opening of the newly renamed Maple House. It looked perfect. White trim, soft porch lights, children's laughter spilling from an upstairs window. On the front step, a small brass plaque read, "In honor of the families we choose." I stood there, heart aching in that strange way grief and peace can overlap. Carmen turned to me. "Would you like to see the inside?" "I already know what it looks like," I said. "But I'd love to see who lives here now." She smiled and held the door open. Inside, the house breathed again. The kitchen smelled like coffee and cinnamon. The marks on the doorway, our childhood heights, and were still there under glass. A young woman with tired eyes and a baby on her hips smiled at me shyly. "You lived here?" she asked. "Once," I said. "Now it's yours." That night, driving home, I thought about boundaries, how people mistake them for punishment when really they're just proof you've learned to love yourself enough to lock the right doors. I didn't ruin a wedding. I ended a performance. And somewhere between those two things, I found peace. If you've made it this far, you already understand the point of this story. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's living well enough that you never need to explain yourself again. If this story resonates with you, subscribe, share it, and tell me in the comments. What would your boundary look like if you stopped apologizing for it?